Hello, Bisi.
Hi, how are you?
It's nice talking to you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I wrote some questions for you.
Yes,
Your curatorial practice has brought you to work in many different places in the world.
yes.
And what is the vision you have of contemporary art today? And do you see any specific trend dominating and somehow standardizing the art scene, internationally speaking?
That's a very wide question. It's
Yes.
it's well, it's very wide, and what I can only talk about is, what I find interesting, or the ways but I wouldn't say that there's one specific thing. I mean, there are issues, of course, of the moment, which are pertinent, including the instability, the uncertainties, that exists across the world now, whether it's in Europe, America, across Africa, or Latin America. It seems, we are in a sort of heightened period of, uncertainty and instability, and that has an impact on the work that artists produce.
Yes.
But also, I'm really interested in, at the moment, in the way in which artists are creating works that, apart from engaging with the social and the political, but also engage with the immersive and the sensorial.
I would like now to focus perhaps on your most recent project, and maybe you want to talk about them, the way you approached this project and the issues you're covering when curating this project.
Well, the one that I've just finished is the Bamako Biennale,
Yeah,
of course,
yes, yeah,
in Mali, and that's the 10th edition of the Photography Biennale, which returned after a 4-year gap. A 4-year gap that was the result of the threat to the country's sovereignty by jihadists. The northern part of Mali was invaded in 2012. And, as we all know, over the last 4 years, there have been, sporadic incursions and casualties. And, that also, that's a more specific case, but then that also extends to, more global instability, whether it's the protests over the last 3 years in Brazil, the Black Lives Matters in America, the war in Syria. We can just keep, naming and listing the amount of political instability, and of course the consequent results socially. So what Telling Time, which was the title and the thematic of the Bamako Biennale, was one way of engaging with the present and the recent past, and this traumatic experience that the nation went through, which is also indicative of the traumas and the instabilities across the world, and allowing artists, through lens-based media, to articulate some of these experiences, but not only focusing on the present, but also trying to understand the past,
yeah,
and how the past has an impact on the present, and in using that to engage, with the future. I think it's an open theme, it's quite broad. So artists had the possibility to come at it from a multitude of perspectives. And I think this added a richness to the way in which we experience, our present, our today, and how we engage with, other periods. So, across time and space and geographies, I think, that brought a really interesting, discursive element to the project.
Okay, and Bisi, and then would you like also to tell us something about the projects you are following and curating in Lagos, in your city?
The approach that I have in Lagos is to really try and engage with the local. I think for me, over the last sort of, since I've been working with CCA, but even more over the last 4 or 5 years, I have wanted to really engage more with the dynamics of artistic practice, but also of, everyday realities in Nigeria. And, for me, that's interesting because of the way in which art from Africa gets homogenized as, one country, one place where everything is the same. But it's not, we need to look at this, we need to look at the specificities, of each environment. The way art exists in Nigeria is completely different from the experiences and the infrastructures in a place like Mali, for example.
Of course, it's a huge continent, of course.
Exactly.
Of course.
But then
it's huge.
that, the way in which it's articulated outside of the continent, sometimes makes you, I'm always asking, they're like, yeah, I want to do art from Africa. And I'm like, where exactly? Be specific. And I sort of demand, that specificity so that, everything, because my experience here is completely different from the experience of the next country. So in our programming, we're interested, of course, in bringing a wide perspective. We do international exhibitions, we do regional exhibitions, and we do exhibitions that focus on, Nigerian artists and issues that may concern them. So in the past, we have done exhibitions, solo exhibitions of Nigerian artists as a way of, giving exposure to artists who maybe under normal circumstances wouldn't be given the space to show the kinds of work that they show, whether it engages with issues around sexuality, around the body, because, we are operating in a fairly conservative context, at least a conservative artistic context, and the gallery system is predominantly commercial. So there's a sort of, limit on what they are prepared to show and engage with. So we feel that CCA should be a platform that allows for experimentation of media, of artistic practice, but also of thought, of critical thought, where we can bring people together to discuss, important social and political issues of our time. So, just to give an example,
please, yes.
I would talk about an exhibition we did, which was around Occupy Nigeria, and on the 1st of January, the president decided to increase the price of petrol by, over double, maybe 60, 70%. And this, of course, has an impact on day-to-day lives that are already quite challenging, whether it's buying food or transportation or school fees. So this resulted in a nationwide, protest against this increase. Now, normally Nigerians are known for going out protesting for a day or two, but I think for the first time, in our history and with the use of social media, this was something we're going to drag out until, there was some kind of compromise that, benefited or that was convenient for all parties. And, spurred on by the other revolutions or protests, the Arab Spring, for example, the Brazilian protests. I think that also gave us, a sense of power,
Yes.
people's power, if you wish.
Of course.
And Nigerians of all stratas of society, rich, poor, middle class, the elites, the intellectuals, everybody came out onto the streets, and were prepared to stay out there for as long as, it took. And the government saw that we were serious and were able to bring the cost of petrol down. Even after that, there were a lot of discussions going on television, the radios, in the newspapers. And what CCA wanted to do is wanted to respond. I think that's one of the things we can also do, is we don't have a rigid programming. We also like to be able to respond to what's happening in the immediate. So I called with my colleague, Jude Anogui. We decided to respond to this moment and provide a platform where we can bring, cultural practitioners together to discuss the effect of what had just happened. So we invited photographers who had been out in the streets documenting the events to bring their images, and we would do a slideshow. We invited Emeka Ogwa, the sound artist, who had collected over 5,000 Twitter messages, which we showed in the gallery. We invited the activist and performance artist, Jaleli Atiku, who had done a performance in the streets, to come and do one in the gallery space. And then we had a panel discussion where we invited lawyers, cultural activists and artists, and even, somebody who works in technology to come and discuss, what had happened. So, those are one of the ways we can respond to what's happening in the immediate, in our space,
yes,
and bring it into a cultural arena so that we also form part of the discussions that are going on.
That's fantastic.
And then we have other exhibitions that we've done, which, much earlier on. We did an exhibition called Like a Virgin in 2009 it was, with two then emerging artists, South African photographers, Zanele Muholi and Lucy Azubuike, a Nigerian artist that works across the different media, photography, video, painting. And this was an exhibition on the body and sexuality. And it was one of the sort of first, I would say the first exhibition that really engaged sexuality and the body within the visual art space in Nigeria. And as you know, Zanele Muholi is an internationally renowned Black lesbian photographer, and Black lesbian activist photographer, who has documented for many years the lives and the joys and the tribulations of, Black lesbians or the gay community in South Africa. But especially one of her first major bodies of work, documents, tries to portray the way in which Black lesbians have been attacked and even killed within the South African environment, the intolerance that exists within the society, and trying to portray that these are human beings just like anybody else, irrespective of their sexual preferences. And within a Nigerian context, that was already a taboo subject, if
Yeah.
you wish.
In many places, Bisi, in
And
many
many
places,
places,
even in Italy, this is a
exactly.
taboo.
As a curatorial project, bringing these two artists, Lucy Azubuike's work dealt with, the conflicts of tradition and modernity that women have to bear in the way in which they're responding to a culture and a tradition that says a woman must do this, that, or the other, and then trying to also fulfill their own dreams and ambitions. So there's what society wants and there's what you want. And these tensions and these conflicts, form the basis of Lucy Azubuike's work. So I thought it was really interesting to bring, these two women's work together. It wasn't about being, shocking or confrontational, but it was about showing, the complexities of the lives of, women, not only in Africa, but across the world. And I feel that at the time that the exhibition took place, this is 2008, 2009, at least within a Nigerian context, I felt that, a lot of women artists were not pushing, the boundaries of what is possible to present, what it's possible to articulate, and the complexities of their lives. So, we have this tradition here of, male and female artists taking women as their point of departure, but not engaging with it in a critical manner. And, for me, these two artists, represented a strong voice, about women's body, but also about sexuality, but more than that, about the freedom to be who they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's why these subjects, were really important. This thematic is important because it's coming from a very local context.
Yeah.
But
But it is international, Bisi.
but exactly, this is something that's universal.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's where the power of the work resides, that, it's very, personal. It's personal to Zanele Muholi, the experiences, that she's documenting. It could be her. And it's also the same with Lucy Azubuike. But at the same time, it's extremely universal. I think women and anybody from anywhere in the world can identify with these two bodies of work, artists' work.
I would like us to tell us also about some, maybe recent projects that you are curating in your space.
Well, it's this, how do I put it? So CCA over the last year, because we're in our 8th year, we're in our 9th year this year, and we're going to be 10 next year, 10 years of existence. So over the last year, we've really been thinking about, how do we want to move forward? What are the priorities that we want to work on? At the time that CCA was opened in 2007, there were very few platforms for critical discourse, for experimental practices. It was quite rigidly painting and, sculpture. No or little room for lens-based media, which was our focus: photography, video art, and any other art and installation, anything that was experimental within this context, performance art. When we started, there were very few platforms, for artists to come and express themselves. But today I'm pleased to say that the art scene has developed. Photographers are now considered an important and integral part of the visual art. They're getting, visibility internationally. Also performance art, more artists are engaging with performance art, and of course video art as well, with the forming of the Video Art Network Lagos.
Wow.
So now I'm thinking that the priorities that we had 6, 7, 8 years ago are not so urgent anymore because there are other, spaces, there are other platforms that have opened that are dealing and engaging with some of these practices and some of these themes and providing platforms for, discussion and debate, which was almost non-existent at that time. Mm-hmm. So, we have a really dynamic art scene, which is great. So we've been thinking, what do we want to do and how do we want to move forward? And the starting point for CCA was not the gallery, but actually the library, the research center, the resource center. And we've built up over the last 8 years the largest independent specialized library focusing on visual art and visual culture. So we want to return to that. We want to return to the library. We want to develop critical thinking. We want to think about, art history, because, the art history, although Nigeria is extremely advanced in developing and publishing and writing its own art history, that's not the case for most countries, I would say, across the continent. Therefore, we find that over 95% of written content on artistic practice across the continent is actually written in the diaspora. It's written outside of the continent. It has been the case. It remains the case today. And for me, that now becomes a matter of urgency, that we that are working here on a daily basis, that are engaging with the arts on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, if you wish,
yes,
need to begin to articulate our ideas, our visions, our experiences in the here and the now, in this place. So we want to now begin to focus on using the library as a starting point for what we do, for our exhibitions, our talks, our projects, and all these other possibilities of programming. We're sort of starting little by little. We've already published. Recently, we did a major book on the Nigerian photographer J.D. Okayo-Jekere. We've done a pocket publication on the sound artist Emeka Ogbo. We hope to be doing more publications over the next 2 to 3 years. But we don't see publication as just, a book. Yes. We actually see it as a curatorial platform. Yes. How can we begin to explore the printed page as a curatorial platform, as opposed to the white cube? How can we go over and beyond the white cube? So for me, that's what I'm finding interesting at the moment. And we are working on 2 or 3 books. I'm starting the research for a major monograph, which of an older artist. So one of the areas is to do substantial monographs on a modern artist. The first one was on a modern photographer, Ojekere. I've now started research on Demos Nwankowu. He's 80 years old this year, has been a practicing artist, architect, painter, sculptor, designer, theater designer. He is just your all-round African art renaissance man. And I want to do a substantial monograph on he's a publisher and a writer as well, on this extremely important artist. The research has just started. Hopefully we can start working on the book from next year. We'll spend a year doing the research, start working on the book next year. This year we're doing another, emerging artist. Her name is Odun Orimolade. She had an interesting exhibition at CCA in which called the project is One Work, where we invite an artist into the gallery space to create just one work, using the whole gallery as their canvas.
Oh, wow.
Odun was extremely interested, she paints, she does installations, but drawing forms a considerable and substantial part of her artistic practice. So she wanted to do one drawing using all the walls of the gallery space. So the publication we want to do will use that project as a starting point to look over her practice over the last 10 years. So the pocket monograph comes at a critical moment in the artist's, artistic career, where, it's an opportunity to take stock of what they've done, for it to be reflected in a publication, but also to curate the publication. So I'm really interested in that. And in doing that, the book becomes available to a wider audience that may not come to the CCA gallery space, but also it's a document that exists as part of what has been happening within the local art scene. And most of these books are results of many years of discussions and interaction with the artist and with their work, whether it's studio visits, whether it's them showing at CCA, or even in other galleries. So it takes, a more inclusive and more contextual, local context, as opposed to something that is sort of more abstract and fits within this, homogenizing discourse around Africa. This now becomes a discourse on art in Lagos, art in Nigeria, art in West Africa, art in Africa, and international art, because, there's this relation. She's showing abroad. She had a show in New York last year with other artists around drawing. So, and I think that complexity, the multiple levels of artistic practice and discourse are not being captured in this sort of encompassing focus on Africa.
Yeah.
So those are, one of the projects that we want to work on. Within the gallery space, moment we have on an exhibition on video art, which is the collaboration with several institutions, with the Biennale in Germany. So it's called Biennale in Lagos. And it's a curatorial collaboration between Biennale in Germany and Video Art Network Lagos, as well as the Goethe Institute Lagos and CCA Lagos. So it started with a 10-day workshop with video artist Theo Esetu and Nigerian artist Jude Anogui, doing a workshop with about 18 Nigerian artists. Then it was followed by the Biennale exhibition, which brings international video artists and Nigerian video artists together. It's being shown across 2 spaces in Lagos, of which the main exhibition is at CCA and another exhibition at Freedom Park. So that's what we have on at the moment. This will be followed by a photography exhibition, which is actually touring across Africa. It's an exhibition which is the result of a program that curator Simone Njami has been doing for a couple of years, which is portfolio review of photography portfolio reviews. I've been part of it. I think it's been going for about 7 years now, and I was part of it for about 5 years. And after 3 years, the results of the portfolio review usually is an exhibition. So this year they have 3 really exciting artists, 2 from South Africa and 1 from Kenya, Musa Umalo and Tabiso the late Tabiso Segala from South Africa, and Mimi Cherino from Kenya. It was shown during the Bamako Biennale as an off, and it's now in Nigeria. It was going to be shown at the Goethe, but as we had a slot, I'm really happy to show it because, I've worked very closely both with Tabiso and Mimi, who actually were in the official Bamako Biennale exhibition. Yeah. But they've also both been part of the Asiko program that CCA does, the roaming art school that moves across Africa for 5 weeks each year. So I'm really happy to be able to host them at CCA, and I'm excited about the exhibition, but also as a way of using it to, have different talks and seminars around photography and some of the themes, around travel that the work engages with. Then after that, we have another show, another exhibition with 3 young Nigerian artists. And this one is different. I'm really excited about it because it's also the result of a collaboration with the Summer Academy in Salzburg in Austria. For the last 3 years, we've been collaborating with them to send each year a young artist to the Salzburg Academy for 3 weeks, residency workshop. And after the last participant went last year, I was like, okay, so we've had 3 artists who have been. What do we do next? What do we do with this program? How can we do more? And we've decided to have an exhibition with the 3 artists, not so much to present work, but to share the process that they developed whilst on the residency, to talk about how that has had an impact on work that they're making now. And what's interesting about that is you have 3 different artists working in 3 different media who have been at 3 different times to the same place. Yeah. So, I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think it's also educational because that's very important in what we do in Nigeria. It's still an emerging art market. So we can't, not engage that educational side of professional development. And it's for them to share experiences about, the possible ways that residencies benefit one's career. These are young artists, because sometimes you find a lot of young artists going on residencies abroad or to, different countries across Africa or across the world. And they just jump from one residency to another without a specific vision or strategy for the residency. So 2-3 years later, they're not much further off than where they were when they started. So I think this is, and sometimes some of them go not really knowing what they're supposed to be doing there, because if you go on a residency where they just leave you to do your own thing, that may not be the best thing. Some need residencies where there's interaction, there's contact, there's feedback, more than once or twice. But if you're more mature, then of course you can go on a residency where you need to be left alone because you're already working, you already have a direction that you want to push to the next level. So I think this is an opportunity for the 3 artists to communicate, how this residency has been, as they have said, turning points in their artistic practices, and share with other artists and their colleagues and their contemporaries. So that would be the 3rd exhibition for the year. And I like that process because it also builds on an exhibition that I did 2.5 years ago to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Ella Natri, the internationally renowned artist whose sculptural, bottle-top sculptural installations, have been renowned and acclaimed all over the world. And, we did this exhibition because I was like, okay, I can't afford to do an exhibition of his huge works. Our space is not that big. And also the insurance costs will probably be my budget for the whole year.
Yes,
So
I can imagine.
how do you engage, an artist of this stature within this context? So I decided to do an exhibition that is more archival and sort of traces the trajectory from the time he left university in 1974 to the present, using, all different materials, sketches, drawings, videos, some works that I found in his studio. He was a lecturer in the fine art department for over, let me see, is it 30 years or 25 years at the University of Nigeria? So I invited 3 students, to reflect that aspect, that major aspect of his life. But also we were able to show some of his early works. There was a collector that had some works of Elf Anatri from 1975. So that's a year after he more or less graduated, a year or 2 after he graduated from university. And then showed some of his wooden panels, and then I had a tiny piece of work from his bottle top sculptures, which we couldn't have the whole lot, but I thought that we want to de-emphasize that aspect because the journey that got him to where he is today has not been engaged with sufficiently, especially internationally. And I thought we showed videos, documentaries, we had music, the kind of music he listens to when he's working, the books that influence his artistic practice, images, photographs, from over the years. We even had, this is somebody who keeps everything. He has kept all his pay slips from the very first one to the last one. That's over a 30-year period. So we showed a pay slip from each year. He was a lecturer at the University of Nigeria. So this exhibition that we're going to have with the 3 students, it's also about the materials they use. I'm really interested, I try and do as many studio visits as I can because I think that process of making the work is so important. What we get to see in the gallery space is the end result.
Of course, it's the end, of course.
Exactly. So it's sometimes interesting and important to bring aspects of the process into the gallery space and even look at that as artworks in their own right.
Bisi, what do you think of this growing interest, internationally speaking, on the production of African artists?
The growing interest.
Yes, it's growing and growing, the interest.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I think it's really, really great because in most of the countries, there's very little infrastructure, opportunities to present work professionally. There's little or no funding to make the kinds of work that you want to make. So I think the interest internationally means that it's sort of shining a spotlight on the work that these artists are making. A lot of artists working in isolation for many years, producing work that they don't show. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was introduced to the work of Lucy Azubuike through Elanatri. She was a student at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And when I went to see her work, she was doing a body of work which it's called her sort of was on menstruation, called her menstruation diaries, if you wish.
Yes.
And she had been creating these works for about 7 years and had never shown anybody. I think she'd only shown it to Elanatri.
Yeah.
And he's the one who said, go and see this artist. She's doing some interesting work. And when I went, I was like, whoa, this is incredible, at least within our context. And I'm like, where have you shown it? She goes, what do you mean show this? I've never shown it to anyone apart from Elle, let alone shown it publicly. And I said, I want to show this. This is so important. And I know that there are hundreds of artists like her creating work that they don't show. Another one recently is last year, a young artist photographer came up to me and said, I'm creating this other body of work. Can I show it to you? Because I don't know if I can, show it publicly. And she showed it to me, and I thought, well, what's wrong with it? She goes, yeah, I'm naked in it, it's naked images. Yeah. I'm like, so?
Of course, so.
So, but sometimes they don't know because they're not in a context that allows that kind of discussion. It's not, maybe it's not as supportive as it could be. So it's really important that they can, show their work. Otherwise, it remains very insular, very...
Bisi, just a question.
Yes.
If you said that they are isolated.
Yeah.
So how do they get the inspiration for the artworks or to become artists if they are so isolated? Where do they get
when I say
isolated
from? When I say isolated,
yeah.
I mean isolated from what's going on in the wider world.
Okay.
Because of course, in all cultures, art has always existed. So, when I mean isolated, I mean in the sense that in very few countries, you may not have platforms for discussion.
Okay.
Where it does exist, it's just focusing on painting and lovely pictures.
Yes, of course.
So, which is also, like I said, one of the reasons that I wanted to set up CCA, so that artists that are being more experimental have a platform where, we can engage their work, we can talk about the work, we can talk about the subject matters. We're not going to be judgmental that, oh, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? When I decided to organize Like a Virgin and a few people saw the works, they were like, Bisi, are you sure you should be doing this? And I'm like, what? Yeah. You have all these religious intolerance going on. When we had the opening of the exhibition, I was scared, really, really scared.
And what happened?
Homosexuality is illegal in Nigeria. And therefore, still is. It was voted into law 2 years ago. Very recently, it still is. And I did this show in, 2008. So when when I was organizing, I wasn't thinking about any laws or anything like that. I was just doing my job, showing great artists. But then when I did research, I'm like, oh, let's check what's going on here with regards to showing this work, Zanelli's work. And I'm like, ooh, I could be arrested. I could be shut down. So, I sort of panicked a little bit.
Of course. And what did it happen? Did they do anything?
Sorry?
Did they do anything against the exhibition?
No, nothing happened. But that's the context in which I was working.
Yes. But did any kind of politician came or?
No, nothing. The politicians are not really interested in art. So in a way, it's great that they're not interested because we can do this exhibition, but also it's problematic because it means that they're not supporting the art either if they're not interested in it. So for every good thing, there's a bad side.
You said that politicians are not involved. So how do you get your support?
Through international funding. We apply, to foundations that support cultural practice in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So you have the Prince Claus Fund. You have also work with people like the British Council, the Goethe Institute, the French Institute. If it's an American artist, we can work with the American Embassy, the cultural department. So, you have a couple of embassies that, also help with cultural programming. So sometimes it's good and sometimes, there's no funding. So I've got this program going, but I don't even know if it's going to be funded or not. So we work in a very precarious situation where But I think for me, we've had times when we've been very well funded and have been able to do, great exhibitions, whether we're collaborating with, like we did the Progress of Love, where we collaborated with the Manil collection, and, that was really good. We could do the kind of exhibition. There was even funding for artists to create new work. So that was nice.
What about the space? Is it given by the public community there, or do you have to rent it?
No.
Or
When I say that the government doesn't fund, they don't fund anything, nothing at all. So the space, I just look for funding through patrons, and sometimes we generate a bit of income if we sell a work. So for that, I have to just get on with it, find strategies.
but
Yeah.
Is it just an idea of yours to open this space?
Yes.
Wow, very courageous of yours.
I'm really, lucky because I have really committed, dedicated colleagues, and we all sort of have the same vision of what needs to be done, and we just get on with it, which is really great. We have a lot of fun. We've learned a lot. We've grown. It's been really, really fantastic.
Okay, Bisi. I think that you have been also very generous with me. Thank you, Bisi.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.